1 year classes since we didn't have the last one. So it's basically about viral keratitis, Murins also, and corneal dystrophies and degenerations. So these are your learning objectives or learning outcomes. So at the end of this session, you should be able to describe viral keratitis, its clinical picture, and its management. Okay, so we have already talked about bacterial and fungal keratitis. So today it's the topic, the session will be on viral keratitis, its clinical picture and its management. Okay, how is viral different from bacterial and fungal? How do you differentiate it? Okay, and by means of its clinical presentation. Then describe herpes zoster ophthalmicus, which is another viral infection. Then the clinical picture about herpes zoster ophthalmicus, management and complications. And you all should also be able to differentiate between corneal dystrophies and degenerations and know briefly about Murins ulcer. So now coming to viral keratitis, basically there are two viruses, herpetic eye disease. So one is the herpes simplex, the other one is the varicella zoster virus. So herpes simplex keratitis, it is responsible for causing the herpetic eye disease, which is the major cause of unilateral corneal scarring worldwide. Okay, so because of herpes simplex disease, because of the keratitis, which will lead to ulcer, that will lead to, later will lead to scarring. So it is one of the major cause of unilateral corneal scarring worldwide, and 60% of corneal ulcers in developing countries is due to the herpes simplex virus. So coming to the ocular lesions of herpes simplex is basically divided into primary herpes and recurrent herpes. So primary herpes, the lesions, you have the skin lesions, you have lesions or ocular features in the conjunctiva and in the cornea, whereas in case of recurrent herpes, that is mainly the cornea is affected. Okay, so you can see that in the form of various types of keratitis, like active epithelial keratitis or stromal keratitis or trophic keratitis. Okay, so that's the recurrent herpes. Now coming to the primary ocular herpes or the primary features of ocular herpes. So usually it occurs in non-immune patients or persons young age from 6 months to 5 years. So in very young people, very young age people, you have the primary ocular herpes where no immunity is developed as such, okay, or less immunity. And skin lesions are usually the vesicular lesions which are in the skin, either on the forehead or on the eyelids and all. And the conjunctivitis is acute follicular conjunctivitis. Okay, so it's mainly the presence of follicles in the conjunctivitis. So keratitis is epithelial, okay, epithelial keratitis. Usually the stroma is not affected. So these are the primary ocular herpes. We have the skin lesions, which are in the form of vesicular lesions, and then the acute follicular conjunctivitis, and keratitis is usually the epithelial keratitis. So recurrent herpes infection, it occurs whenever the virus, which is dormant in the trigeminal ganglion, that reactivates, and that causes the recurrent infection. Okay, so you'll have to remember that because for the recurrence to take place, the virus which is being lying dormant in the trigeminal ganglion gets reactivated due to the various trigger factors like fever, ultraviolet exposure, trauma, administration of topical or systemic steroids, and immunosuppressive agents. Okay, so these are the trigger factors which causes the reactivation of the virus, and because of that, leads to recurrent infection. So coming to the viral keratitis, okay, so basically it causes the epithelial keratitis. That is, the mainly is the epithelium is involved. So these are the cause of events or the clinical picture. So first is the fine epithelial punctate keratitis. These are transient, okay, that later it becomes a cause punctate keratitis, and that will later progress to a dendritic ulcer, and ultimately it will become a geographical ulcer. Okay, if it's a big one, that is a geographical ulcer, and usually in such cases, the stroma is affected. Okay, so usually in case of viral keratitis, usually the epithelium is involved, the stroma usually is not involved. So it starts with the fine epithelial punctate keratitis, where just small punctate keratitis is present. That progresses to a coarse punctate keratitis, then to a dendritic ulcer, and that to a geographical ulcer. So now coming to the dendritic ulcer, so this is the typical pattern seen in cases of viral keratitis. Okay, dendritic pattern, or like branches of a tree. So in this picture, you can see it has branching pattern. Okay, so dendritic ulcer or dendritic pattern is pathognomic of viral keratitis. That's how we are going to differentiate whether it's just by looking at the clinical picture or by looking at the signs, whether it is bacterial, fungal, or viral. Okay, so in viral, you have these branches, a linear branching pattern. Okay, so ulcers with linear branching pattern, and it stains with fluorescein. So you can see the fluorescein staining here, and these lesions are associated with decreased corneal sensation. And another important thing you'll have to remember in dendritic ulcer is that the presence of terminal bulbs. Okay, so here you have the presence of terminal bulbs here also you can see the terminal bulbs. These are typical in case of herpes simplex keratitis, whereas it has a similar pattern like a dendritic pattern in case of herpes varicella zoster, also herpes zoster infection, but in that cases there is absence of the terminal end bulbs. Okay, so presence of terminal end bulbs is pathognomic of herpes simplex infection, herpes simplex keratitis. So branching pattern there along with staining with fluorescein, and then the lesion is associated with decreased corneal sensation. So you have to measure the corneal sensation or test for the corneal sensation in such cases. And in this picture, you can see that enlargement of a dendritic ulcer has led to a large geographical or a amoeboid ulcer. Okay, so that are the stages. So fine punctate keratitis, then that will lead to a coarse punctate keratitis, then to a dendritic ulcer, typical branching pattern with terminal end bulbs, and then ultimately into a geographical ulcer. So coming to the treatment of herpes simplex infection, herpes simplex keratitis, almost 50% of the active epithelial lesions, they heal. Okay, and the cure rate with treatment is around 95%. And the main treatment of choice, of the drug of choice, is acyclovir ointment. It comes in the form of 3% ointment, and it is given 5 times a day. And because at this dose, it penetrates the intact epithelium and stroma, achieving therapeutic levels in the aqueous humor, thereby helps in faster healing. Okay, so that's the dose of acyclovir. And other drugs like antibiotics can be given at times to prevent secondary infection. You have to give atropine. You have to give acetazolamide, especially if it's a big ulcer, and of course analgesics and vitamin A as well, compared as previously taught in the bacterial corneal ulcer. Okay, so in addition to other drugs, acyclovir is given because it's the mainstay of treatment. And sometimes mechanical debridement is also done. So with the help of a blunt needle, the debridement is done because this helps in better penetration of the drugs and faster healing. Okay, so this is about the herpes simplex keratitis, the primary lesion which causes the herpes simplex keratitis, the various types, dendritic ulcer. Okay, and then you'll have to remember the other drugs also are given, whereas acyclovir 3% ointment is the drug of choice. Now coming to herpes zoster ophthalmicus, it is mainly caused by the varicella zoster virus. And this occurs in elderly patients. So unlike the herpes simplex, which occurs in young patients, herpes zoster is usually in the elderly patients. So what happens is that after an attack of chickenpox, some virus which are stayed or retained in the dorsal root ganglion, it causes a retrograde spread under the influence of trigger factors, which we've discussed before, that will spread, have a retrograde spread, and will cause sensory nerves from the skin lesions. Okay, so it has a retrograde spread from the sensory nerves from skin lesions, and reactivation of that virus, it causes the migration down the sensory nerves to the skin and eye. Okay, so in here, herpes zoster ophthalmicus, you have to remember it's elderly patients which are more affected, and usually takes place after an attack of chickenpox. And since the sensory nerves are affected, which supplies the skin and eye, so therefore the skin lesions and eye lesions takes place. So first and foremost is the skin lesions, followed by the ocular lesions. So mechanism of ocular involvement in herpes zoster ophthalmicus is as follows. So one could be due to the direct viral invasion. So because of epithelial keratitis and conjunctivitis, okay, so that is due to the direct viral invasion. Secondary inflammation, so it could lead to episcleritis, scleritis, uveitis, and this is due to inflammation and destruction of the peripheral nerves or CNS. And because of this, it can also cause post-herpetic neuralgia, which causes severe pain. And the other one is the reactivation, which causes necrosis and inflammation in the affected sensory ganglion. And because of that, that leads to corneal anesthesia and leads to neurotrophic keratitis. Okay, so these are the various mechanisms of ocular involvement. So direct viral invasion, secondary inflammation there, and reactivation. Now the clinical features. So cutaneous lesions are the first lesions which are seen in case of herpes zoster ophthalmicus, followed by the ocular lesions, which can be in the form of, can affect the conjunctiva, the cornea. You can have chronic herpes zoster ophthalmicus, and sometimes even neurological complications because of the involvement of the cranial nerves. Coming to the cutaneous lesions, so these lesions are seen in the area of the affected nerve. So after 3 to 4 days after the onset of the disease, you see the typical onset of rashes or diseases, skin lesions in the form of vesicles, pustules, or crust, or sometimes even scars on one side of the face. Just one half of the face is involved: the forehead, the eyebrows, and then the skin of the upper eyelid, as well as sometimes even the lower lid and periorbital area. So this is a typical picture seen in cases of herpes zoster ophthalmicus. The cutaneous lesion is always on one side of the face. Okay, almost invariably involves the this forehead, then the eyebrows are affected, and then the eyelids and even the periorbital edema. Okay, and then sometimes the tip of the nose is affected like this in this picture, so that is known as the Hutchinson's sign. Okay, so whenever the tip of the nose is involved or is affected, that is known as the Hutchinson's sign. Okay, so the typical lesion. So in fact, you can make out a patient, an elderly patient, from afar when you have these lesions, these cutaneous lesions on one side of the forehead and the eye and nose, then you can guess that it could be a case of herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Okay, so usually the skin lesions are in the form of vesicles, pustules, crust, or scar. And in the conjunctiva, similar like in herpes simplex, you have the acute follicular conjunctivitis. Okay, conjunctivitis, presence of follicles there. Then the cornea, you have acute epithelial keratitis. Okay, so you have fine dendritic stellate intraepithelial lesions. So these are usually developed within 2 days after the rashes. This is known as acute epithelial keratitis. So that epithelial keratitis, it progresses to a nummular keratitis. So this usually occurs 10 days after the appearance of the rash, and multiple fine granular deposits beneath the basement membrane, and it is surrounded by the stromal haze. Okay, so this is a nummular keratitis, and this nummular keratitis then that leads to a disciform keratitis. So keratitis in the form of a disc, okay, usually occurs around 3 weeks after the rashes after the skin lesions, and usually it is central. Okay, so disciform keratitis, also known as Wesley's ring. So you can see that it is occurs in the form of a ring or in the form of a disc. Okay, so you have the epithelial keratitis there that leads to that progresses to a pneumonokeratitis, and this further progresses to a disciform keratitis. And then you have the dendritic ulcer. So unlike the dendritic ulcer of herpes simplex, here you can see that there are no terminal bulbs. Okay, so terminal end bulbs are not seen in herpes zoster ophthalmicus. So this is a dendritic ulcer and dendritic plus a large geographical or a amoeboid ulcer stained with fluorescein. So neurological complications, as I was saying, it can lead to third or fourth or sixth cranial nerve palsy. So you can have complications because of that. And it can also affect the optic nerve and lead to inflammation of the optic nerve, so known as optic neuritis. Okay, so these are the neurological complications which can take place. Okay, so the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerves are affected, and optic nerve is also involved, and because of the inflammation that will lead to optic neuritis. And in features of chronic herpes zoster ophthalmicus is because of the chronic, this is a chronic case, that will lead to ptosis, trichiasis, loss of lashes, okay, lipid keratopathy, deposition of lipid in the cornea. Then sometimes because of severe ulceration, because of secondary inflammation, it can also lead to perforation of the corneal ulcer. Okay, so these are features of chronic herpes zoster ophthalmicus, where you have ptosis, you have trichiasis, loss of lashes, and then you have the lipid keratopathy there, and you have to remember about severe ulceration, which can lead to perforation. So now coming to the treatment, you have to treat both the skin and ocular lesions, though of course the skin lesion is taken care of by the dermatologist. So in the skin treatment, so in addition the analgesics which is given because of the pain and all that, you have systemic valcyclovir 1 gram TDS or famciclovir 250 mg TDS for 1 week. And locally acyclovir ointment or steroid or both. So either you give acyclovir ointment or steroid or a combination of both 3 times per day until the crust separate. Okay, so that is about the treatment for the skin lesion. So you have to give systemic antiviral drugs. In addition, the local treatment of acyclovir ointment or the steroid or combination of both 3 times per day until the crust separate. Whereas in cause of ocular treatment, so as we all know, it's acyclovir 3% ointment 5 times per day. That's the drug of choice. And then steroids sometimes, okay, usually topical steroids. The weak steroids are usually given. And then you have the cycloplegic drugs, which is nothing but atropine. Okay, and then others like analgesic, acetazolamide, vitamin A, all are added as well. Okay, so that's about the herpes zoster and herpes simplex infections. So herpes zoster and herpes, herpes simplex and herpes zoster infection, mainly they are differentiated by the presence or the absence of the terminal bulbs, because both will have the similar pattern of the dendritic ulcer. Now coming to the next topic, which is Murren's ulcer. Okay, so it is a rare idiopathic disease which is characterized by progressive circumferential peripheral stromal ulceration, which later has a central spread. Okay, so it is usually a peripheral stromal ulceration. Usually it occurs in the periphery of the cornea, and then the stroma is affected very fast in such cases. And later it spreads circumferentially, okay, 360 degrees, and then can cause spread to the center of the cornea as well. So if it does that, then it is most likely to perforate. Then males are affected more than females, and bilateral involvement in 30% of cases. Okay, so usually it has two varieties. the Murins ulcer. One is the bilateral involvement and the other is unilateral involvement. So bilateral involvement is seen in 30% of cases. These are more aggressive than unilateral involvement. Whereas the unilateral involvement, they have a slow progression and response better to the treatment. Okay, so usually they have two types, the unilateral and bilateral variety. So unilateral usually has a slow progression, response better to treatment, whereas the bilateral ones are more aggressive. And usually they say it's an unknown etiology, but sometimes could also be due to an autoimmune process. So usually the diagnosis of Murins ulcer is done by identification of clinical features and exclusion of other causes of peripheral ulcerative keratitis. So usually by the clinical features and exclusion of peripheral ulcerative keratitis. And symptoms, you have the pain, photophobia, and blurred vision due to astigmatism. Since the cornea is affected, since the periphery of the cornea is involved, and it occurs deep in the cornea, that will lead to astigmatism, okay, and that will lead to blurring of vision. So pain is very important, excruciating pain, especially in case of bilateral type of Murins ulcer. So pain, photophobia, and blurred vision. So usually it's the peripheral ulceration. To start with, it starts in the superficial 1/3 of the clear cornea. So here you can see in this above picture, you can see the congestion in the conjunctiva, circumcorneal congestion there. And then you see that the ulcer has started in the peripheral ulcer in the superior part of the limbus or the cornea, in the superficial 1/3 of the cornea. So later it has a progressive circumferential spread. So once the treatment is started, or especially in case of bilateral involvement, it has a rapid spread, so it spreads rapidly circumferentially. Okay, so 360-degree spread circumferentially, and the central stroma is involved with an undermined edge. Okay, so ultimately it looks like this. So you can see in this picture below that the whole of the 360-degree of the cornea is involved. Okay, here a lot of peripheral ulceration here, but here it is quite clear, but here you can see it is almost going to perforate because the underlying uveal tissue or the iris can be seen. Okay, so it is starts with progressive, peripheral ulceration. It leaves superficial 1/3 of the cornea, then it has a progressive circumferential and central stromal thinning with an undermined edge. So treatment, there are a wide range of therapies and no single effective treatment is available. You have to go for a wide range of therapies, and therapeutic strategy is governed by the severity of the disease and the response to initial treatment. Okay, so wide range of therapies are available and you have to choose and mix and match. So the therapeutic strategy is governed by the severity of the disease and the response to initial treatment. So steroids or cyclosporin is the drug of choice. Okay, so topical, you have steroids or cyclosporin, 1%. Okay, so artificial tears. So basically we start with steroids, topical steroids, and usually weak steroids are given to decrease the inflammation. But if that still doesn't control the inflammation, then immunosuppressive agents like cyclosporin are also given, 1%. Then artificial tears to prevent the occurrence of dry eyes. Okay, and then of course atropine and analgesics and all are given. And sometimes conjunctival resection, okay, where you cut the conjunctiva in the periphery, or cryotherapy also helps to relieve the symptoms. Okay, so that, and then another one is systemic immunosuppressive agents like cyclosporin are also given, and surgery is the last option. Okay, so if it's not healing and all, then you have to go for keratoplasty. So coming to the next topic, which is corneal degeneration and dystrophy. So corneal degeneration, as we all know, degeneration is the condition in which the normal cells undergo some degenerative changes under the influence of age or some pathologic conditions. So in degenerations, it is where the normal cells undergo the degenerative changes, and it is usually unilateral, it is asymmetric, and it is usually peripheral. Okay, so corneal degenerations are usually unilateral, they are asymmetric and peripheral, and they are associated with systemic diseases. For example, rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease, and changes due to age, inflammation, or systemic disease. And examples are band keratopathy and lipid degenerations. Okay, so lipid degenerations are due to age, and band keratopathy are seen in uveitis. Okay, so due to inflammation here and due to the age. So you have to remember that the corneal degenerations are, they are unilateral, they are asymmetric, and they occur in the periphery of the cornea and associated with systemic diseases due to age, inflammation, and some examples are band keratopathy and lipid degenerations, like the lipid degeneration in the cornea, which is in the periphery of the cornea, which is known as arcus senilis. Now coming to the dystrophies, so these are usually inherited disorders in which cells have some inborn defects. So usually dystrophies are the inherited. So there are no associated systemic disease in such cases. It has a bilateral involvement and central cornea is involved. Okay, so it has no systemic association like in case of degeneration. It is bilateral, whereas degeneration is unilateral, and central cornea is involved in dystrophy, whereas in case of degeneration it is peripheral. And examples of corneal dystrophies are epithelial dystrophies and stromal dystrophies. Okay, so you can also have the endothelial dystrophies as well. Okay, so dystrophies according to the various layers of the cornea. Okay, so in short, these are the differences between the corneal degeneration and dystrophy. So in corneal degeneration, so the location, it's important. So the corneal location is peripheral in degeneration, whereas in case of dystrophy, it is central. Whereas laterality, it is unilateral in case of degeneration, whereas in dystrophy, it is bilateral. In symmetry, it is degeneration is asymmetric, whereas dystrophy, it is symmetric. Then vascularization is common in case of degeneration, and in cases of dystrophy, there's no vascularization. And family history is common in case of dystrophy because it is inherited, whereas not so in degeneration. And this is in the elderly age, 40 years or more, and this is seen in 10 years or less. Okay, so this is all about today's class, mainly dealing about viral keratitis. So you'll have to know about the systemic conditions, okay, of herpes simplex and